tonight? That is much better. Well, welcome to the Achieving Cures Together annual gala with this year's theme, Growing Hope. I'm Brendan Haller. I'll be walking you through our program this evening, just providing a little bit of guidance. We are really looking forward to either introducing or reintroducing to you what Achieving Cures Together is, has done, and plans to do in the future. And that is save lives by advancing microbiome research. And throughout this program this evening, you're going to be hearing from researchers, patients, and those who have seen the effects these diseases can have on people's lives. And they're here because they believe that there's still work to be done. Now, be amiss, and before I forget, I'd like to take an opportunity to thank our special sponsors and corporate sponsors who helped make tonight possible, particularly allowing your donations go directly to benefit treatment and research. So I'm going to list them off all here if you could just hold applause to the end. Our Platinum Dinner sponsor, Survey and Ballot Systems. Our Platinum Event Venue sponsor, which, I mean, we can all agree here, this is fantastic, Sovereign Estate. You know what? Yeah, we need to clap for that one especially. Our Platinum Dessert sponsor, CC Donovan and Company. Our Platinum Wine Tasting sponsor, Streamworks. Our Platinum Wine Glass sponsor, AFPI. Just a note on that too, you can take your wine glasses home. You don't need to leave them here. So that is a gift. Don't feel guilty about it. Our Platinum Multimedia sponsor, Klechka Publishing, Platinum Videography sponsor, Advanced Imaging Solutions. Platinum Live Music sponsor, Phil and Kelly Bruno and Mary Lynch. And lastly, our Platinum sponsor, Affiance Financial. Thank you for all you do to help save lives. I also want to note that on each table, there is a book provided by a generous gift from Klechka Publishing to Achieving Cures Together to change the heart of man. It's about the life of Harold Klechka, father of the artificial heart. There's only one book per table, so instead of having to fight to the death for it, check on the back of your chairs. There is a little jewel either on the right or the left-hand side. So one lucky person that possesses, it's on the top of your chair. Not on the back, you don't have to get up. You don't have to get up. You thought, so you get, whoever has it, there you go. You have a door prize, you get to take the book home. It is fascinating. All right, I know the book is exciting. Appreciate it. All right. Do you guys have wine tonight? Is that kind of fun? Really, it's a great book and it's a great parallel because it captures the research story of Dr. Harold Klechka and his quest, similar to our own, of finding cures and helping prevent greed and lust from getting in the way of specifically helping individuals. He was one that helped fund the implantable artificial human heart blood pump, and actually the first patient of this procedure, we have a special guest this evening, was his sister, Barbara, who's sitting over in the front row right over here. Let's give it up for Barbara. Talk about pioneering research, and that's exactly what we're here to do, and we have living witness to that, and how many millions of people, because of your courage, that have been helped. So thank you for that, thank you for the donation of the book. Now, we are very thankful to be able to host our gala this evening at the wonderful Sovereign Estate, and it could not have been possible without the help of the co-owner, who has her own story and how she found Achieving Cures Together. So, please join me in showing great appreciation and a very warm welcome to our venue host, Terry Sovereign.
I didn't know I was going to be first. I'm going to use some technology tonight. And I love the flat lighting, so this is really good. So, I want to welcome you all here. My name is Terry Sovereign, and along with my husband and my sons, we're the owners of the Sovereign Estate. And we want to welcome you to this very special evening. We host many, many events and fundraisers. But tonight you're here at this place because of me, because you see, I'm the patient of Dr. Koretz. Tonight you will be amazed at the science and the research and the results of his work, but I will let him tell you about all that. I don't want to go into the long and sordid details of my story, but I will a little bit. I'll tell you that for about 7 years, I struggled with recurrent infections of diverticulitis, like one attack every 8 weeks. The usual course of treatment is antibiotics, along with a liquid diet, then a soft diet, then resume your diet. Okay, I'm feeling good. Then 2 days later, bam, I was sick again. I repeated that scenario at least 12 times and had many trips to the ER. The surgeons were not sure they could help. I went to Mayo in Rochester. No, surgery won't help. I went to Mayo in Jacksonville. Here's some more antibiotics, really strong ones. That should do it. But I wasn't getting better. Now, if any of you can guess what might be happening, somewhere along the way I just started to have really bad cases of C. difficile in between the diverticulitis. Now that really frightened me. I was searching for answers everywhere. I read National Institute of Health medical journals. I went everywhere on the internet. I would look for everything I could find. And then I recalled my second oldest son, Victor, a chemical engineer, saying to me at the very beginning of my illness, "Mom, you need to get one of those poop transfers." And of course, I would be willing to donate. I should have paid attention. But I was certain it was my diet that was the problem. It was something I was eating, like wheat. I must be celiac. No, you're not celiac. Are you sure? Probiotics will help. I even ordered probiotics and beets from a celebrity doctor who had it in for vegetables, they were toxic, and plastic, that was toxic. This must be it. While I anxiously awaited my order, I threw out all my plastic Tupperware and all the plastics in my house. My package came. I was expecting to find glistening glass apothecary jars filled with magical probiotics. What I found was cheap white bottles and beets sweetened with stevia. That was not good. Someone once said you can never be too thin or too rich. Not true. You can be too thin. I really felt good as long as I wasn't eating. By now, my diet consisted of rice and eggs and potato chips. A word about potato chips. They actually saved me. Lay's thin for breakfast, Ruffles for lunch, and wait for it, kettle chips for dinner. We lost friends. No one would invite us over or go out to dinner with us. I was in despair. My husband, Paul, who was usually so sweet, was frustrated. A doctor himself, all we could do was pray, and we did a lot of it. And it sustained me, and I believe finally brought me to health. Never underestimate that. Finally, one night I was researching on the internet again, dealing with C. diff following a colon resection surgery, which nearly took my life. I made it all the way to the L page of Google search, and there I found the page about research at the University of Minnesota about microbiome transplant. Dr. Koretz had published a paper, and he posted his email address. An email address. It's hard to describe my emotions as I typed that first letter. It was something like a cross between a cry out to a crisis center and speed dating. How could I tell him everything in one letter? I tried. I closed the letter and went to bed thinking nothing would come of it. Then about 2 hours later, bam, he wrote back. Paul, he wrote back. Well, Paul said, that's remarkable because doctors never email their patients. This is to tell you what a truly caring and concerned person Dr. Koretz is. He took back the time to write to a nutcase. I wish that was the end of the story, but it still took a few more episodes and hospitalizations and a lot of frantic emails before it was clear that most of my diverticulitis attacks were probably a recurrent C. difficile infection. This made me a candidate for a transplant. Yes, I have been transplanted. And I'm here to say I'm doing great. No pain, no attacks. I can eat pretty much everything I want. And I had the great benefit of boosting my immune system during this pandemic. I'm amazed by this work, and I want to help the research even more. I told Dr. Kortz I can write a check for his foundation, or I can throw a really big fundraiser that will raise a lot of money, and that's why you are here. And I hope at the end of the presentation, you will realize how valuable these efforts are and be very generous. The Achieving Cures Foundation is committed to this cause, and I'm happy to be a part of it. By the way, I don't know if my donor is here tonight or if I will ever get to meet them, but I just wanted to say, thanks for giving a shit. May I present to you Dr. Alexander Kortz.
I usually don't cheat, but I don't have much time, so I actually wrote out something. Okay. Is that any better? Yes! Thank you. Thank you, Terry and Paul. Thank you, everyone, for coming. I can tell you, we're all here in part because of a question, a dream, vision. Only a young person who is naive to ways of the world works could have posed. That young person is Peter Westerhouse. About a decade ago, he was a kid who lived and breathed football. He was recruited as a star player to be a Gopher football player at U. But life threw a curveball. Life has a way of doing that. He was cut down by a disease called ulcerative colitis, disease of inflammation in the colon. And he had a really nasty case of it. His big, all-muscled frame was reduced to skin and bones. But his spirit was as strong as ever, and he fought a very hard fight. And during that fight, he asked a couple of deep questions. Again, questions only a naive young person could ask. One was, why is it that with all the millions of people affected by this disease, and there's about 1.5 million people with ulcerative colitis, and about 3 million people in the US with inflammatory bowel disease, why is it that we don't have a cure? Why is it just managed with expensive medicines that cost tens of millions of tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars per patient, but no cures? And the second question, it just doesn't seem fair that out of all this misery that he's experienced, drug companies, hospitals, doctors, were all making pretty good money, but he was still miserable. Didn't seem fair. Young people, they care about fairness. We adults are not so naive. We know life is not fair. And it's true, the heart of our medical system is a very cold capitalist engine. The goal is to make money, not to create cures. Many times, the system does work, and the profit and helping patients do align together. And we do have much better medicines and technologies than we did decades ago. And there are even some cures, like the hepatitis C, for example. That used to be a chronic, devastating disease. Now we have a cure. But it's also true, he's right, when drug companies do develop their business plans, they prefer models of chronic disease that they can manage. It's a better business model. And cures, they do potentially kill the business model. So most people will still tell you, with warts and all, this is the best system possible, and there is no alternative. Well, I'll tell you, I respect that system. I'm part of that system a lot of the time. But there are alternatives, and this is not necessarily the first example by any means. I'll give you an example of cystic fibrosis. That's a disease that I actually do work with as well for a long time. So it's a genetic condition. The problem is forming mucus that's well hydrated, and because of the gene defect, the mucus is viscous, and it clogs up various tubes in our body. In people, it's lots of airways, but also in the intestine and other places. And the thing is, there's only about 30,000 patients with cystic fibrosis in the entire United States. And in the 1950s, the median life expectancy of a patient with cystic fibrosis was 15 years. Today it's 42. And if somebody lives till 42, they're going to live another 20. And a child born with cystic fibrosis today can be told, you're probably going to live a normal lifespan. So, small disease, the fact is the drug companies didn't care about a market of 30,000 people. What happened there, it was a pediatric disease, is that the patient community organized. And they said, well, there's nobody for us, it's just us. So they pooled their resources, they hired the best scientists, they set a goal. Their goal was that a person with cystic fibrosis is going to live a normal lifespan. It wasn't an easy journey. They made lots of incremental advances along the way. They still are. And every patient participates in research, usually more than one project. As far as research dollars being spent, compared to a disease like inflammatory bowel disease, it's like 100 to 1. They didn't push the drug companies away. They carried the initial research to get enough momentum, and the drugs were developed, and at that point, the drug companies did become interested. They had the intellectual property, they joined forces, the two models converged, it worked. I literally have patients with cystic fibrosis today who say, you know what, I never planned to live this long. I lived kind of dangerous life. I was like drinking and doing all kinds of stuff, and here I am. I was not prepared for this. So when Peter and his dad came to my office, we were working on a different disease. This was C. difficile infection, or C. diff. This disease is actually a complication of antibiotics, which long considered, still are, one of the greatest success stories in medicine. The problem is that our own bodies have microbes. We have very specialized, organized communities, primarily living in the intestine, that we coexist with. They're part of our body. People commonly know this as the gut microbiome. So when we take an antibiotic, you're just like throwing a grenade in there. You may be treating the infection, but you're also disrupting that normal. Happens to be fairly resilient and can withstand a lot of insults like this. But you do become vulnerable to problems like C. diff during a period of time, shortly after antibiotics. So that's an infection. It takes advantage of this disruption. And then once it settles in, it's very difficult to get rid of because it makes spores, and they can kind of evade your therapies. And the standard therapies, guess what, is more antibiotics. That's what we do. We try to kill the C. diff. Problem is, you're also killing the normal microbes, which were holding C. diff at bay in the first place. And that's how people get into this cycle of recurrent infections. And so, it didn't take a genius to figure out what the solution is. The solution is to restore the balance. And that people thought of back in the 1950s, as soon as the antibiotics showed up. The cure did not need to be invented. It was already there. God and nature did all the hard work. Our task is to harness that power and bring the cure back, which is to reintroduce the microbes back. So I'm just going to fast forward. With the help of Achieving Cures Together, we build now a totally unique program. We manufacture different formulations of human, and these are human, gut microbes. They're derived from healthy donor stool. We do it with the strictest pharmaceutical standards called GMP manufacturing, good manufacturing practices, just like a drug company. We have a quality assurance department that goes over everything. And these processes have been approved by the FDA and can be used to treat C. diff patients and can be used in a variety of clinical trials. Turns out C. diff, a big disease as it is, unlike cystic fibrosis, 30,000 patients, about 500,000 patients a year get C. diff. About 100,000 get recurrent C. diff. I digress, but every time I see a patient, they tell me, "I've never heard of this. Am I the first one to get this?" People don't talk about diarrheal illnesses. Anyway, but what I'm trying to say is C. diff is actually just a canary in a coal mine. Turns out that gut microbiome is important for many things. It's an integral part of our physiology, and we've been neglecting it for decades, throwing antibiotics, processed food, not really nourishing our microbes. And it's entirely possible that a lot of the modern diseases are in part, at least driven by this altered composition in the gut microbes. And so there's a lot of interest now in trying to repair that variety of diseases. Ranging from autism to heart failure. And so, given that we are the only program, actually, that is manufacturing this material that FDA is accepting for clinical trials, our model is that let's collaborate with as many different investigators all over the United States so these trials can happen, to do this early research in order to drive mechanistic understanding and develop ways to repair the gut microbiome for these other applications today or someday. So over the last decade of our existence, with the help of Achieving Cures Together, we really have been the little engine that could. We treated, at this point, about 1,000 patients with C. diff infections. We did it free of charge for the actual medicine. And then we support all these trials. We have led and are leading the way. And in fact, drug companies have taken notice. They do like the work we did, and they thought this is actually a pretty good business model too. And so we can totally expect that probably within a year, after about a year, there will be drugs patterned on what we've done on the market. They're already being kind of priced at about $10,000 to $20,000 an administration. And that's how the world works. There are investors who invested in the process to get to the approval, and they want to see a return on the investment. And this is a good story because this is still not well known, and the cure will be available to more patients. We know, though, in our system, about a good fraction, maybe a third, won't get that cure anyway because of the insurance blocks, because it's kind of too expensive and inaccessible. Things will fall through the cracks. So, even for the sake of C. diff, I'd like our system to survive. To have a nonprofit alongside the Goliath, to have an option for even the C. diff patients. It also is the engine to drive further research into other areas. So again, we do support some very interesting trials. There is a work being done in Arizona on autism. I didn't think that was going to be anything, but it turned out to be a surprisingly interesting story. There are no medicines for autism. It's all kind of behavioral therapy and a lot of desperation. And we did some preliminary trial that was published in 2017 that showed that actually, it turns out that the microbiome of patients with autism is constricted. There's fewer microbes and it's just some derangement. And if we do fix that, their GI symptoms improve. A lot of the autistic patients have various problems with their gastrointestinal tract. And they can't quite verbalize the discomfort either. And so it looked like their GI symptoms improved and their behavior improved, possibly because they felt better. If your tummy hurts and you can't say much about it, maybe you're not going to behave that well. But it could be that there's also an axis between the microbes, gut, brain, through some neurotransmitters. That's also possible. Some of those kids actually had dramatic recoveries and went to university. So that's being currently in a randomized trial of a placebo-controlled. That's one example. There are others. Right here at the university, we're doing a trial that's actually clipping at a pretty fast pace in patients who get bone marrow transplant. When you get that procedure, you get bombarded with antibiotics. Why? Because your immune system, and so your cancer has to be really rigorously treated. And along with that, trying to kill the cancer, you kill the immune system. And your gut is denuded because you got radiated and all that chemotherapy. It's the worst of combination you could put together. And so patients, unless their cancer returns, why do people die after that? A third dies because the cancer returns. The rest is non-cancer mortality. That's driven by infections. That's driven by so-called graft versus host disease. So what happens, actually, because of the damage, because of the antibiotics, and everything that we do, the residual microbes that are there are not friendly anymore, and so they invade, and that's a cause for infections. And the new immune system that develops after bone marrow transplant, in that context of being invaded all the time by microbes, lashes out, and that's graft versus host disease. So if we can repair the gut, we're likely to see far fewer complications of bone marrow transplant. We have a trial in heart failure, advanced liver disease, and we do have one in ulcerative colitis that's moving along. This was the initial ask of Peter, and that seems to be actually showing some promising results, at least from some patients. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. It's not as simple as C. diff to try to fix the microbiome, to shift the microbiome in a different context. And that's the science that needs to be done. So I invite you to join Peter's dream. All of us were young once. At one point or another, we all hope to make a difference. Most of us still do, but we kind of scaled down our dreams. I personally was the most fortunate person because I got to stay young, to live Peter's dream, to make huge differences, to be able to treat 1,000 people. We accomplished a lot. But compared to what can be done, we're still a little seedling. But, so I do invite you. Unfortunately, I have to also say that we're kind of in trouble. The COVID didn't leave us unscathed. Our model was that part comes from grants that we write as researchers at the university. Part comes from working with other groups who pay us for the manufacturing that we do, and part comes from philanthropy. And during COVID, what happened is that unless you're working on COVID, your research was halted. It doesn't mean that you just tell everybody to go home. There's still work to be done. But that also means that the clinical trials that people were doing that were not COVID, they were halted, so they didn't need the product anymore. Everything came to a screeching halt. We did write some grants about COVID, but every single researcher was writing grants about COVID on a different angle. So 2.5% were funded. We actually had some good ideas, and some of that was supported later from other groups like in Hong Kong, that if you repair the gut microbiome, it looks like your COVID outcomes could be better. That was our idea. So we survived in no small part because of achieving cures together. But now we're kind of at this critical junction where I really hope we don't disappear by being squashed by this. So probably a very tender moment in our existence. Hate to end it on this kind of a plea note. Looking back, we achieved a lot over a decade. I think we can do a lot more. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Dr. Kortz. Just in a show of hands, how many of you are repeat attendees of any sort of Achieving Cures Together event? Raise your hands, raise them high. Love to see that. How about first-time attendees? Wow. We love to see that. And it continues to show that we're getting bigger, better, and more well-known, even in the midst of COVID. And if you know someone that is, friend, family, loved one that's having any sort of gastrointestinal issues, take some information home. I believe you all got this pamphlet right when you first registered on your tables. There's a deck with some more information, but better yet, invite them. Invite them to one of our events. We have researchers like Dr. Kortz here and others as well that would love to tell you more about what they're doing and perhaps point you in the direction of someone who can better answer their questions and help them find that hope. Now, I have the pleasure to introduce Peter Westerhouse and Christy Weinstein. Peter will be speaking first, then Christy. Obviously, Peter is the founder of Achieving Cures Together, as you already know, and former patient of Dr. Kortz, having the vision of turning his suffering into the hope that we desire to grow. Christy is the executive director of Achieving Cures Together, and today, the engine behind this operation. And honestly, I think all of us that have been involved in trying to put this thing on, there's no way we could have been able to do this without you. Here to talk more about what ACT is, where we are, and where we're going, please give it up for Peter Westerhouse.
Wow, feels like I'm in a football stadium. The lights coming down. Love it. Feel like I'm at home. First, I really want to just reiterate the big thank you to Terry and Paul and Sovereign Estates. This is absolutely spectacular. I'd like to thank all the corporate sponsors again as well. Many of the companies have individuals and employees here this evening. You really have made all this possible where the contributions that are made tonight are going directly to Dr. Kortz and the team. So thank you, corporate sponsors. I want to thank all the committee members, all the people that made, put the event on, worked very, very hard on it. So if you see anybody with the little silver name tags, give them a special thank you. A lot of hours were put into this. So. And then finally, I want to thank each and every one of you here today. It's amazing looking out here and seeing all the familiar faces, all the people that have come to events year after year and have supported this work from day one. You've been an integral component of the team, And of those 1,000 people that have been cured, you are just as responsible. And you've provided that. So big thank yous to you. And to everybody that is new here, it's just flat out exciting. It is flat out exciting that we have the opportunity. We have the opportunity as Achieving Cures Together to introduce our organization to you, introduce stories of patients, people we've helped, and to invite you to be a part of the team. So I'm so grateful for that. You know, you heard Terry's really powerful story. You've learned a little bit, Dr. Quartz, on the Minnesota, University of Minnesota Microbiome Therapeutics program, who's really the engine behind this. And after Christy and I, you're going to hear from Amanda, who's an integral component of that program, and is going to share some stories of patients and people that we've helped, families. Beautiful stuff. So I feel like you're going to get a really good flavor of Achieving Cures Together. You know, what we do, who we are. But I want to dive a little bit deeper into what started Achieving Cures Together. Because many of you might know my story, but many of the new people in this room don't. And I think the underlying foundation of this organization is passion. We've got a lot of really passionate people. And therefore I want to share a little bit about kind of what led to this. Take you back to 2011, springtime. As Dr. Quartz said, I had a 4-year scholarship to go play football for the University of Minnesota. And right before I was going to report to school on spring break my senior year, I was hit in the head by a boulder in the Grand Canyon. Rock about this big. Knocked me out. Remember coming through, the world was spinning, blood everywhere. Ended up having a severe skull fracture, concussion, 50 plus stitches. It really was the first initial blow that hit me. Took about a year to bounce back fully from that, where I had my weight back and I was able to play football again. I wasn't going to let this sideline me forever. Football was truly my passion. And so got back out on the field, was starting to feel good, and second season with the Gophers, I started seeing blood in my stool, and more blood. Was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis, and again, basically just said, this is the second blow, give me my meds, this isn't going to stop me. Well, there were different plans in store. Over the next about 12 to 18 months, my body completely attacked itself. I went from 235 pounds to 148 pounds, 30 plus bowel movements a day, constant blood, couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. It was living hell. And I was trying every drug, therapy, under the sun, diet, meditation, hoopla, whatever, and nothing was working. I was in despair. I wanted to quit. And then I was introduced to Dr. Quartz and their team. My dad and I learned about fecal transplants, where you take these microbes, transplant them in your large intestine with the hopes that these healthy gut bacteria will regenerate, bring down that inflammation. And to me, it was like, wow, this makes a lot of sense. I'm tired of being stuck with therapeutics. Let's give this a try. And so we did. And seeing Dr. Quartz, his team, and the care that he provided was incredible. Now, the fecal transplant wiped out my C. difficile. I had recurrent C. difficile on top of my ulcerative colitis. And C. diff, it is a horrible, horrible disease. It'll make you feel sicker than you can even think. But this fecal transplant wiped that out, and then started seeing healing around my large intestine. It was amazing, absolutely amazing. I had 3 fecal transplants. Unfortunately, it didn't cure me. There was a portion of my descending colon that was so severe, I had to have surgery, ended up having my large intestine removed, had a bag for 9 months, three total surgeries. That was a challenge with itself. But through those struggles, the head injury, getting diagnosed with ulcerative colitis, having football ripped away from you, the bag, the surgery, there were a lot of blessings, and a lot of people that were so supportive. One of those really being Dr. Kors and his team. And so we saw an opportunity. There was an opportunity here with this microbiota therapy, and so little funding, so little going towards advancing this research. We said, we've had enough of this. We're going to attack this. We're going to find cures for this. And so that was the driving force. There was so many people involved in that. That was the driving force behind Achieving Cures Together, and is the driving force today. We don't want to see high schoolers, young kids struggling with autism, high schoolers battling ulcerative colitis, other people getting pulled out of sports due to inflammatory bowel disease, whatever it might be. So we are pushing this forward. We have a phenomenal team, and I am so bullish and excited on where this is all going. So I thank everybody for being here. Christy's going to speak a little bit now on some more about the organization, where it's headed. But again, Christy, I'm going to reiterate what Brennan said. Sorry, I'm rambling here. I'm over time, but Christy has been the engine behind all of this right now. Her attention to detail, her organization. It is an honor to have Christy running the Achieving Cures Together team. So, without further ado, I'm going to introduce Christy Lansdowne, Executive Director.
Thanks, Pete. And I'd like to add that it was truly a team effort. So anybody that has one of these tags on truly made this evening happen. So thank you to all of our volunteers. Achieving Cures Together was born out of a need for additional research on microbial restoration and a model that truly puts patient care first. Sorry about that. It's going rogue on me here. I'm just going to hold it. The majority of patients and families that we work with have a similar theme to their story as Peter and Teresa. The long journey of meeting with multiple specialists and trying every possible treatment option available before ultimately finding intestinal microbiota transplants and healing. As a nonprofit partnering with a leading academic research group, we have the unique and ideal opportunity to truly prioritize patient care. Pharmaceutical companies invest in medicine where it is most profitable, but not necessarily the most needed. ACT is a lean and nimble organization with one paid employee and a talented and dedicated team of volunteers. We keep our operating expenses low to maximize the impact of each dollar entrusted to us to provide life-saving treatments to patients suffering from recurrent C. difficile infections and to further microbiota treatments. When ACT was founded 6 years ago, our research was solely focused on treating C. difficile infections. We have since treated over 1,000 patients with a 98% success rate. And some of our patients are here today. Our work is centered on meaningful partnerships. With the University of Minnesota, we are working with academic providers and research groups around the country and are supporting clinical trials targeting illnesses including autism, recurrent C. difficile infections, ulcerative colitis, advanced liver disease, complications of acute leukemia therapy, Parkinson's disease, and immuno-oncology. Our autism and ulcerative colitis trials are taking microbial research to a new level by targeting specific strains of bacteria in the therapeutic treatment. We are at the tip of the iceberg with so many positive indications connecting our gut microbiome communities with health conditions across the health spectrum. And it is our partnership with you, our ACT Village, that allows this work to continue. So thank you. Each patient success story is a direct result of your support. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Amanda Cavitch from the University of Minnesota's Microbiota Therapeutics program. Amanda is not only a talented researcher, but also a former C. difficile patient who found healing through intestinal microbiota transplants. Amanda now works alongside families in our autism clinical trial and is here to share their experiences. I broke the microphone for you. It's this piece here. It's not staying. I'm sorry. Thank you. You're not going to invite me on next year.
Good evening. I'm Amanda Cavitch, and as Christy mentioned, I am a former recurrent C. difficile patient of Dr. Quartz, as we've seen, who isn't a patient of Dr. Quartz. But I've also been a researcher at the University of Minnesota for almost 14 years now. My career actually started in pediatric cancer research, and then about 8 years ago when I had my fecal transplant to cure me my C. diff infection, it was kind of a no-brainer to switch career choices and move into the field of microbiome research. 2 years ago, I had shared my story at an ACT fundraiser, but tonight I'm here to talk about some of the most meaningful work I've been able to be part of over the last couple of years. I have had the pleasure of working with 3 really wonderful families, each of whom have a child with autism spectrum disorder. I have never worked in autism and definitely am not an expert in this field, but thankfully Arizona State University, who is one of our collaborators, has been leading microbiome research in autism across the country and have very established research protocols. So by using their protocols, I applied to the FDA for each of these 3 families to get access to fecal microbiota transplant treatment for their children. And it was a success. I've been able to treat all 3 children. One of the families is here from the Twin Cities area, whose son was 5 years old when we began treatment. The second family is from Illinois, and their daughter was 11 years old. And the third family from New Jersey with an 8-year-old daughter. 2 of the families have given me permission to share some of their stories with you tonight. So our youngest child, the 5-year-old boy, after getting his microbiota transplant, his mother would send me updates, and almost instantly she saw improvements in his GI symptoms. He was having healthy, regular bowel movements, which he had never had in his life. He was sleeping better, he was more alert, aware, less cloudy, he was more conversational, more social. My favorite day was the day when she sent me an email of videos of her son, and one was prior to starting treatment, and one was after. And it was him showing me how he would play with his peers. In the first video, he was next to a lot of other children, but he really played by himself and kind of looked off into the distance a lot. In the second video, after starting microbiota transplant therapy, he was engaging with other children. But not only that, he was actually initiating play with these kids. And I probably watched those videos a dozen times or so, just watching this very distinct difference in this little boy's demeanor at 5 years old. I'm becoming quite emotional watching these, and I couldn't imagine how the parents felt. As Dr. Quartz mentioned before, there are no medication therapies for autism, and these families feel very desperate. So to watch your 5-year-old little boy play with other kids for the first time is quite remarkable. And not only do I have these videos and stories the family has given me, but through these protocols, we do a lot of measurements. We do behavioral measurements, we collect their microbiome data. We want to make sure, is this actually working? Or are these stories the parents are telling me? So with this little boy, because it's been so long since we treated him, we actually have a lot of long-term data. And through some of these autism measurements they use, we've been able to see this drastic change, and the mother shared this with me. The social responsiveness scale is a tool they use in autism to see how a child responds in social activities. Prior to his treatment, he was in the severe range. And after 1 year after treatment, he was scoring in the mild range and was actually 1 point away from being in the normal range. And the childhood autism rating scale just is another tool used to look at autism symptoms in general. And he was initially being scaled in the moderate symptoms, and 1 year after treatment, he was in the mild to almost no symptoms range. And so I can only imagine, how the family feels about seeing this change in their 5-year-old little boy. And so on to my 8-year-old girl in New Jersey. She just started her treatment therapy this past March, so we're only about 6 months past her treatment, and her mother sends me almost monthly updates, which I love. Same as before, she saw instantaneous improvement in the GI symptoms. Her daughter had struggled with chronic constipation, often going many days without a bowel movement. And again, as Dr. Kurtz mentioned, if these kids are struggling with GI symptoms so badly and can't communicate that, that has to be contributing to some of these behavioral issues. So she told me her daughter was very excited about this new regularity she was having. All of a sudden she was going every day, and she was really excited. They also saw that she had had abdominal distension her entire life, looking like she was constantly bloated, that just disappeared. And it's continued to be that way 6 months later. She started to have a more diverse diet, getting them liking to beans and lentils. But the biggest thing the parents really kept focusing on, what they would send me emails about, was about this independence this little 8-year-old girl was finding. She started getting dressed on her own to surprise her parents. And it started by her parents picking out her clothes, and she would actually be able to get dressed. This was a child at 8 who had never been able to put on her own clothes, and was now all of a sudden doing this. And then one day, out of nowhere, while her mother was helping her younger brother, she actually went to her own dresser and picked out her clothes. The mother didn't even know that her daughter had an awareness of where her socks were located or where her pants were located. But finally, for the first time, she could actually go and do all this on her own. She also started putting on her shoes and heading into the backyard to go play in the swing set by herself. And the family has chimes in their doors, and so the first time they heard the chimes ring, both parents had made a mad dash frantically to see what was going on, and there was their daughter in the backyard laughing and playing on the swing set. And they continually sent me messages about how they could tell she was aware of this new independence she had and how proud she was that she could do things on her own for the first time. Months later, this independence continued to flourish, and I get another story about how she's taking orange juice out of the refrigerator to pour herself a cup, and how one day she spilled and her mother was waiting in the room to see how she'd handle it, and she just calmly got some paper towels and cleaned it up and put it in the sink. This is again something that this 8-year-old girl would have never learned how to do. And the last story that was recently shared with me is she now can just go to the bathroom by herself and actually demands her privacy from her parents. And anyone who has kids, that in those years of toddlers, you're there all the time with these kids. And to think that you have an 8-year-old that still needs you all the time, and all of a sudden 6 months later after this therapy, they're doing all these things by themselves. The mother continues to share these stories, and the parents cannot be happier with what they've seen in their daughter. So I brought up my previous research in pediatric cancer research for a reason, because when I worked in that field, I was often asked, how can you do this work? I could never do this. It's so heartbreaking. It's so sad to work with kids with cancer. And it wasn't easy. Many of those years, I had a lot of kids who did die of their cancer in my studies. But despite all of those tragedies, I always felt very inspired in the work. Kids are resilient, I think far more so than adults when it comes to facing difficulties. But the parents of these children are really amazing too. When your child is ill, nothing else in the world matters. You will do whatever it takes to help give your child a better life. And these families with children with autism have no other option. This therapy is their hope. The Arizona State University trials have been so successful They have wait lists of hundreds or thousands of families trying to get their children in to these trials. And that's why we have been contacted by some of these families to do these individual treatments, because they want hope. We all know what that's like when a loved one is sick. The stresses of the world, big or small, can fade into the background because all we do is hope for their suffering and their struggling to come to an end. And that's the mission of Achieving Cures Together. It's giving people hope. And so I thank you for being here tonight and supporting ACT. We couldn't do our work without all of you, without ACT. And we couldn't give all of this hope to people without this wonderful organization, without your support. Thank you.
All right. Our next speaker, quite frankly, probably doesn't need an introduction because he's probably asked you at one point or another to get involved with ACT or to give. I mean, I saw him roaming around the room earlier today and just seems to know everyone. He is the founder and president of Survey and Ballot Systems, board member of ACT, but most importantly, a father who watched his child suffer by means of microbiome disruption. He has seen firsthand the toll that it takes on family, loved ones, and envisions the potential for the research that we are funding. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome John Westerhouse.
Thank you, Brendan. What a pleasure. Thank you, everyone. If I hear the articulate scientific medical research coming from Dr. Kortz, I hear and see the passion in Peter. I admire so deeply Amanda and all of this team. Be ready for the Jethro version, because that's where I'm going to get to. Because it's so personal, it's so incredible that I stand back and I am in awe, and the excitement of this evening has just put another chess piece on the fact that we are going to achieve cures together, and that we are already accomplishing that in Terry's story and others. And so my purpose tonight is to come and just be the closer, right? Everybody knows you go to the galas or the nonprofits and you come to the point where it's now you need to ask for donations. And as I was formulating that, how to ask, it was quite difficult, because you start out with this simple, quick message and you want to make that happen. They say you have 5 minutes. And then you say, oh, here's what I all got in here. And to share that passion, I'm going to try my very best to condense it down. And based on what you just heard from the others in the room that came up, I would like to say that my ask for you, each of us, is a financial contribution, but I can't stop there. I want each person in this room and all that will watch this video or associated with this evening to take it to another level. And I would call it all-in support. And in all-in support, I'm talking about your body, mind, and spirit. The whole package. The easy one would be the body of fruits of your labor and write a check and make that happen. That support is fundamentally important. But how we would absolutely short our ask if we didn't include the entire component of our life. In a short prop here that I'm going to use, right here. I'll speak about it. This is a box. In this box, it's filled with prayers from little children of grade school. About 600 of them. Go back to the mic. If I could tell you what that was like for Peter to receive that in that dark time, and I appreciate that Pete shared that story, but as a father, and as Sue, my wife, could share, he glosses it over some. As Peter went through living hell, that those questions that you can't answer, is this going to end? The debate of who to see, where to go, how to reach out for help. As parents, and Amanda, thank you, you mentioned that so beautifully, you'll do anything. But there's Peter sitting there clenching his rosary and saying, where is God anymore? And then the prayers show up. And this one is, Dear Peter, we hope you get better. May God bless you. We're praying for you. Please take care. From Haley. Dear Peter, I hope you feel better soon. We are praying for you, and I'm sorry about your injury. Your friend, Grace. Dear Peter, I hope you get better. I bet that almost every angel is watching over you. Sincerely, Anna. And maybe one of Pete's favorites out of the whole 600, there's a nice football on it. And I'm sure he read it with great joy and in great pain, but opens it up and there it is. Football, hearts, goalposts, the M. Dear Peter, my whole school is praying for you. Get well soon and be brave. So, how does that not touch your heart? Huh? When Sue and I see that hand of God and see those prayers and that support from many people in this room showing up at the right time. I mean, it's to the point, folks, we certainly took our shotguns and all those things out of the house. As brutal as that is to say, he is in that much pain. For him to come out of the bathroom and say, I look down in the toilet each time because I think I'm passing nails. They feel like there's nails coming out of me. And what do we say? As Sue just sits out all night long. And we try, and we look, and we pray. And so, my first ask for you is to be that kind of support in prayer for people that you find that are struggling in this and multiple diseases involving your system, your gut. Because if you can't eat, you can't sleep, and you can't poop, well, what's left? As crass as that sounds, it is absolutely true. And if you have struggles in any of those areas, if you can't do any of those well, wait till all three are hitting you. And soon as I think Terry touched on it, you become isolated because you don't want to be where people are. You're going to be put away. You don't want to go out. Who wants to soil themselves in public? I only know one person in this room that had the guts, and she's on my top 10 of admiration, and that is Ashley Marguerite, who was facing ulcerative colitis in 2019 and said, I'm so into this, I'm going to run the Twin Cities Marathon. Bad it is. And they're and her new husband, Ricky, running together, stopping so many times. I can't believe what she was able to accomplish, but she said, I want to raise money for this. We've got to stop it. We've got to cure it. And the passionate component of that, which I just asked you to support for prayer, it also, it comes in concert with, this does make mental sense And in my general version of what I'm trying to say and what I'm trying to convey is that when Dr. Quartz said yes to Peter, and as the healing was we're watching this taking place, the hope is there, but it didn't finish, it didn't work all the way together. But that's when Peter said, we gotta keep going, we're on something, this is something. The part that became exciting, and that in the mind's eye that I want you to share, is that this is connected. This is a connected component of our lives. There's some that show direct connection of inflammatory bowel disease, or diabetes, or possibly obesity. There's connections immediately from your gut to your health and very directly. But then it's the gut brain. And my general version is, how does that work? Well, they talk to each other. All of us could very quickly get diarrhea if we're told we have to speak in front of 2,000 people tomorrow. And how does that work? Why do you do that? And that component is the connection is fascinating to us, and to say, well, why not? Why can't that have to do with depression? Why can't that have to do with Parkinson's disease? What is the relationship that is happening that these two components are talking? And there is something there. And in my general version, I know it. In my heart, I know it. I'm not a scientist or a researcher, but I believe that mind component is so important. And I'll give you a little insight, and Dr. Quartz might give me the stink eye, but I'm going to share with you what Dr. Quartz shared with us at the end of last year, kind of a well wishes, thank you for a great year. I kept an email, and I kept this dear, because in this email he said, I'm quoting him, he said, our scientific work as measured by citation impact of publications. That's basically how much other investigators cite their work. They cite each other as they're pinging and ponging work. He said, was found to be in the top 1% of all science in 1919 and 2020. I'm sorry, 1919 and 1920. This brilliance of what's going on here in humility results in these capsules, and these capsules result in changing the world in very beautiful, simple ways, as Terry would attest. It's almost one of those treasures that, just like today, we walked around here and enjoyed this absolutely incredible venue. We have a venue that is being created and has been created and is doing this work that is the number one place in the world. This is done nowhere else. This is where it's at. And so to know that place, that possible incredible engine for discovery is wobbling. It has me up here wanting to donate more than Sue wants me to, because I'll probably raise my hand. But that passion that I would like you to share in your mind of thinking, this is not a fly-by-night. This is not a weird thing. This is not a leftover from the 70s of, oh, what if we try this? Will it work? And trust us, we tried so many things because you are desperate. So I ask to appeal to your mind and go learn about this. Take it on and go figure it out, because it will impact someone in either your life or someone in your life, dear and near to you, or even some friendship, that they're going to be asking questions about, what is this? Well, go study, go learn about it, because you're talking about frontier learning. This is absolutely incredible, and the possibilities. I'll share one story when the importance of this facility was. Sue and I traveled down to Phoenix pre-COVID, and we're visiting with the two incredible people at Arizona State involved in autism study. And we were just asking, saying, how can ACT help you? Is there what we can do? And they toured and showed us everything, and with just great passion that they're doing, they stopped us and they said, there's one thing that you can do. to support us. That is support this. They said this is the hub of what's making all this possible. And in Peter's vision, it's that doctor right now in Baltimore that's looking at Parkinson's disease now has access to using capsules instead of colonoscopies. Peter bought colonoscopies during his treatment by the dozens. I can't tell you how many. And how that's great, but it slows you down. And looking at the possibility of using encapsulation. And now the next thing is people that have a hard time digesting or taking the capsule because they can't swallow. They've now converted this into a liquid. So kids with autism, it's easier to go down. And no taste, no flavor. I mean, all the jokes can fly. But the fact of the matter is that this process is, and there are super poopers too. They're finding people that might have even more relation in that study, that whatever their microbial set delivers more impact. This is my Jethro version, but folks, this is something that is, I consider, once in a lifetime to be part of. And the last part, when I asked for your support and prayer, your spirit, and then your mind, it is your body. And basically of your body, it's your heart. The heart gets touched in many ways. And in that same email Dr. Quartz shared, he had another piece that I want to quote. Because he is enthused, yet realistic. He's very, very, very scientific. And he said, we are, referring to ACT, he said, we are one team that set out to do the impossible. We set out to change the world. And that's a very bold statement, to change the world. To physically use your gifts to change the world. And as I contemplate on that, that's exactly what's been done. And if you want proof, spend 5 minutes with Terry. Terry Sobbins. Was her world changed? You bet. Was Amanda's changed at her time of her transplantation? Were these families changed with autism? It doesn't have to be looked very far from what we're seeing our world changing. And so it does take our steps. It takes our resources, but it takes the complete package. And that's what I would ask you as my outreach to you is, I request it all. I request every part of you in part of this journey. It's a privilege, it's a pleasure, and thank you very much for being here.
World-changing optimists. Growing hope. That's why we're here tonight. This is the mission. Save lives by advancing microbiome research. And tonight you have taken that first step. Whether you've been involved with ACT before or just coming for the first time, you've taken that first step on the journey along with us. Not just to join and see the scenery, enjoy the wonderful evening that we've had. You come to learn. And after learning comes taking action. For the amazing work of our leaders, researchers, patient testimonials, you can see the momentum that we're creating. And we're just getting started. John is requesting mind, body, and spirit in terms of the different ways you can give it. It might be crossing your mind, how might I be able to make an impact? And if you're thinking that is so wonderful because we have just the partnership opportunity for you tonight. On your tables, I want to see them in the air, pass them around. You'll see these donation cards. There's pens on the tables. Come on, don't be shy. Let's get them all in the air here. Everyone's got them. If you don't have them, trust me, we will get you some and find them. Thanks to the generosity of our corporate sponsors in Sovereign State for hosting us this evening. you have the opportunity of partnering with us and having direct correlation to treated payments and can receive some of the delicious wine that is produced here. Now, these are special partnership opportunities only available for this evening. So if you're already considering giving a gift and you love wine, what's to lose? So, running through the options, $10,000 provides treatment for a patient with ulcerative colitis. Dr. Quartz touched on that earlier, drug companies coming in and charging, doing it for free. You will, if you do this tonight, you'll receive an engraved barrel. We've got 2 up at the front, 1 at the side. At the end of its production life, you're not going to receive the wine in it, but you will get a case of wine with the engraved barrel of your choice. So wine from the sovereign state of your choice and 2 wine glasses. Now, it's not a fully tax-deductible gift. $9,000 is deductible. For $5,000, can provide treatments for 3 patients with graft-versus-host disease, and you'll receive 2 cases of wine. Now, I don't know, I mean, I think the 2 cases of wine could go hell of a party at your house, John. What do you say?
Yes, we could. And we could throw in some colonoscopies if you'd like.
Yeah, Dr. Quartz, can we throw like a, can we do that? Yeah, can we throw a compliment? Okay, perfect. So 5,000, 10,000 complimentary colonoscopy with your donation. That part is not tax deductible, just added bonus. $3,000 provides half the treatment of the patients in the autism clinical trial. You heard from Amanda, and what powerful results are coming from that trial. $1,500 provides treatment for 1 patient with advanced liver disease clinical trial, and you receive a bottle of Grand Reserve wine. I don't really know what that is, but it's the black one over there. I think Terry and Paul had that in a safe earlier. Some armed guards that are blocked over there. It's kept secret, but you can get a hold of it tonight. And finally, $500 provides treatment for a patient with recurring C. diff and receive a bottle of signature wine. The tax deductible amounts are on there. So, how do you get these opportunities? Well, write a check, and if you do so, our donation table is in the back. So please fill out in advance this donation card. You can come with a check, give it to our staff and volunteers in the back, and they'll help you process it. You can also donate via credit card. Where are our credit card reader people in the back? Raise your hands. There you are. So we have 2 credit card readers. Fine, just swipe it. It's like imaginary money. Just swipe it. It goes away. You don't have to worry about it. No one's gonna know. So if you wish to make a credit card donation, go and see one of them. But again, need this donation card. If you want to make a donation just out of the kindness of your heart, that's perfectly fine. You can do it for any amount possible. You can do a recurring donation. Just write that on the card here. All right, it's quiet. We're almost done. Promise. We're getting really close. But just write it down here. That amount will be 100% tax deductible. No gift, 100% tax deductible. And ACT will be sending documentation at a further date for any donation that you give tonight for your taxes, for your tax accountant. And keep in mind too, a lot of those people work with the body, right, John? Work with the body. A lot of employers will match your gift. So you give tonight, you get to double your gift, double the impact. So you can also give the gift of Appreciate Securities. I'm a financial planner myself. Market's been pretty good the past couple months. This could be a great win-win opportunity for you to do so. And if that's something you're interested in, go and see Christy in the back. Lastly, one way that you can give if you, I would say, have the most wisdom in the room is through what's called a qualified charitable distribution. So as a financial planner, I love this. If you were over age 70 and a half, why that's the age, I don't know. I don't write the rules, I just interpret them. You can make a direct donation from your IRA that satisfies the required minimum distribution and no taxes are paid. So you are directly giving to ACT. You don't pay taxes. The government doesn't get your money. We all know that they don't know how to spend it. You give it directly to ACT and they can put it to a much better use. If you want to know how that works, I'll be around afterwards. Just come find me and I can give you that information. So recap, giving by check, fill this out, back table, credit card, fill this out, back table. If you're going to do securities, or if that's something of interest to you, Christy will be in the back. You saw her up front here. She will give you that information. And if qualified charitable distribution sounds appetizing, I can provide that information as well. So, now, evening's not over. We still have a lot of music to be had. There's definitely some more wine to drink, but as far as our scripted presentation, that's a wrap. From all of us here at Achieving Cures Together, we want to thank you once again for being our partner in research. You truly have and continue to make a difference. Now, there's one last caveat. Dr. Kortz, his team, and all the researchers, they are so thankful for what you are doing and what you will continue to do. And so thankful, in fact, that Dr. Kortz will, most likely, consider playing a piece for us tonight. Now, I'm not talking karaoke or any sort of guitar riff. He is actually a very accomplished composer, specifically on the piano, or so I'm told. So please, get your donation cards. The table is in the back. Dr. Kortz will be playing in a bit with the band, we hope. We'll see. But thanks again. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and God bless.